Silly Ame, don't you know studying manga is what we do here? Hello and welcome back to Sailor Moon Studies. I hope everybody is ready to take some notes since our newest sailor, Senshi, isn't gonna let us slack off like we did last time. Now, there's a lot of ground to cover in these two acts, so let's dive right into the intro. But this time with a different rendition of Moon Prism Power makeup. So one of the issues with serialized storytelling, especially at the beginning of a story, is the constant need for a recap. It's not as jarring if you aren't intimately familiar with the characters and are reading the story monthly. Early Sailor Moon, however, has two recaps. The previous issue blurbs, used to refresh readers with the story at present, and the Usagi monologues, which serve the same purpose but are within the actual confines of the story. I'm not going to harp on these too much, as I know they serve a more important function than a narrative one, but just know they take up a few pages for the next handful of acts. On a side note, I still have no clue what the hell Usagi is doing in this panel in Act 3. The general spinning of the wheels aside, it doesn't take long for the story to get to its next major plot point, the recruitment of the soldiers. As we see a chunky Luna adorably sitting on the computer. I know I really don't like going into art comparisons between the different releases, but Luna has got to be one of the most altered characters from the initial publication. Speaking of slightly altered characters, let's talk Ame Mizuno. Her introductory panel just exudes this completely different type of energy than I would normally use to describe the character. She's still very much a Miss Rain insert in these particular panels. If you don't believe me, here's the author stating as much. And if you can't read Japanese, here's some panels for Miss Rain. If I didn't just tell you that this was a completely separate character, I probably could have convinced a handful of people that this was from some failed spin-off. Hell, if I didn't have any integrity, I could have made a clickbait YouTube short on it. Tangents aside, I love how Ame looks in this panel. She looks so cold, calculated, and just completely unapproachable. This is definitely a case of a simple smile and open eyes, completely recontextualizing the character. It probably would have been more effective had the scene prior not just depicted her as smiling and approachable, but that's just nitpicking. I'm not simping for Ame right now either. Well, not entirely. Since this helps form the basis of the character of Ame Mizuno. We aren't introduced to her through her perspective. Ame is built up through the use of gossip. Other characters view her as this distant robotic genius that operates on a whole nother level, and the art reflects this. Naoko rarely does this in her earlier works, so to see this used to such great effect really gives this character a good introduction. Her standoffish nature is so apparent that even the anime changed the initial nature of Ame from being a confirmed ally to being a possible agent of the enemy. A change that serves no purpose. So here we have a case of two different Ames being introduced to us at once. This perception of her and the reality. And to Usagi's credit, she can almost immediately sort out the fact from fiction on her. We as an audience see this 180 almost just as fast. It's pretty much right here, the second she claims she thought Luna was an angel, that just sells her for me. She isn't some snobbish know-it-all rich girl, she's this daydreaming bookworm. And I can really easily see how she stuck around as being one of the more popular Sailor Senshi through most of the original run. Usagi invites Ame to hang with her at the arcade, Game Center Crown. Ame scores exceptionally high on the Sailor V arcade machine, and out pops her prize of the Henshin pen. Usagi throws a temper tantrum and is rewarded with the Henso pen. Why these two are separate objects has always baffled me. They both essentially do the same thing. Why can't the Henshin pen simply disguise the other Senshi? Why make an entirely different device to essentially just costume swap? We see it predominantly in the first arc before Naoko shelves it for the foreseeable future. I honestly just think she wanted to draw Usagi in some cute outfits and that was all the thought that was put into it. But I'm getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Ame states that she needs to get ready for her cram school at a place called the Crystal Seminar. A real clever name. Gee, I wonder what they're up to. Wait, they do classes strictly on the computer? In the 1990s? In the modern day, this isn't all too strange of an occurrence, but there was an odd stigma around computers back then, especially when they were seen as a novelty. You might notice that only Luna and Ame really ever do anything with computers. That's because you either had to be an alien or some sort of whiz kid to understand those damn contraptions. After all, you don't want to accidentally download a demon. Usagi gets the cold shoulder from Ame and decides to either investigate the Crystal Seminar or it was just on her way home from school. Either way, she's handed an advertisement for the classes and tosses it behind her, hitting the well-dressed, definitely not tuxedo Kamin, mysterious boy in the face. I'll drop this pretense as soon as he's actually named in the next chapter. The boy hears Luna speak, which he handles pretty calmly for someone just hearing a cat speak. He proceeds to hand Usagi the advertisement she just threw away, meaning this entire scene was just set up for the throwing garbage at the mysterious boy gag. While we really won't see this gag appear again in the manga, it is a staple joke in the anime's repertoire. Luna then deduces that there's something strange going on with this floppy disk, which takes a little bit of banging on the computer to bring out its mind control functions. At least with rock and roll, you had to play the songs backwards. This just seems like a flimsy methodology. I guess they did accidentally download a demon. Yoma, same thing. I do like how we see the mysterious boy also discover the same hidden material on the disc. Learn to encrypt your brainwashing better. Usagi now embarks on a quest to infiltrate the Crystal Seminar. But I do have to ask, what exactly was the goal here? Not Usagi's, but the enemies. Brainwash a bunch of smart people to find the illusory silver crystal? How? I mean, there's clearly not any tech geniuses amongst a bunch of reincarnated warrior kings and a sorceress. Did they really need to brainwash a group of students to dig into a database, hoping to uncover some encyclopedia entry on silver crystals? I don't know, it just seems kind of half-baked. Draining energy from a computer program is even more ludicrous, so don't tell me any of this makes any sense. Well, anyway, with the aid of the Henso pen, Usagi turns into a doctor working for the school, almost to immediately transform into Sailor Moon. Why are there doctors working for this school if they're just trying to steal everyone's energy? Okay, I'm gonna move on. Sailor Moon once again introduces herself in a rather grandiose fashion. However, she now has her famous catchphrase. Oh my god, I'm gonna butcher this. So, kini kawate oshoki nyo. Or, on behalf of the moon, I will punish you. I'm well aware that this isn't the popular interpretation of the catchphrase, but the Japanese seems pretty cut and dry on it. But please correct me if I'm wrong. It's not a big difference, but please understand why I'm going with this. Usagi is then bombarded with paper, which is the first time a Yoma has displayed a power themed after their particular disguise. Considering I can count all the Yoma in the manga on one hand, this isn't too important of a feat. But within the context of the wider series, this is a first. So, Garuben technically has that going for her. Although she's never named within the manga, so it's sort of a wash. Usagi then proceeds to use her supersonic waves, which have the important distinction of being her only power she doesn't need to say the name of to activate, oddly enough. Unless you want to count that hairpin attack. She even humorously needs to name her seemingly non-magical kick. Luna then tells Ame to activate her pen. But interestingly enough, the abilities activate on their own without the need of a transformation phrase. Which begs the question why. At this point in the series, it's already been established that Usagi has to say the phrase, Moon Prism Power makeup to transform. I know, it's just for dramatic effect. It's to shock the audience into seeing Ame as a Senshi for the first time. But this, lack of a better term, crisis transformation, contradicts the entire point of having a transformation phrase. Rei does it too, and so does Makoto, so it's clearly done for effect, but it does bug me ever so slightly. I mean, every magical attack also comes with a phrase associated, but several different occasions have involved these attacks without the associated phrase. I know I'm looking too deeply into this, and I fundamentally realize that named attacks have their roots within the takusetsu genre, which serves as the basis for Sailor Moon. Perhaps there's an associated reasoning that I'm really not grasping. Perhaps I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Okay, I know that I am. But it's rather early in the series to have a possible contradiction to established rules. Yet to be established rules? Look, I spent too much time on the how, let's return to the why. It's an intriguing way to captivate a reader new to the series. So, sure, I may complain about it not making sense, but I do have 30 years hindsight on Naoko. She was trying to write an engaging story, and that will always supersede any pedantic rants I may go on. Honestly, until I brought it up, 99% of readers didn't even pick up on it, so I digress. So the room fills with an icy fog, or mist, and the enemy is about to get a drop on Sailor Moon, who then performs the iconic Sailor Moon kick for its first and final appearance. She is then whisked away by Tuxedo Kamen, who, let's be honest, really didn't have to be there. I'll discuss what I find strange about not only this appearance, but all early appearances of Tuxedo Kamen around Act 6, but I get the feeling Naoko really wasn't sure what she wanted to do with him. It's not like she ever really figures it out, but it's most pronounced within the Dark Kingdom arc. Well, there's more pronounced examples, but those are for much later. Usagi throws the moon frisbee once again and the day is saved. It is revealed that Ami Mizuno is Sailor Mercury. However, I'd like to draw attention to one small detail. You see, Luna retrieves the moon mask for Usagi, who is seen holding it within the same page as Mercury's reveal. But yet there is no Mercury mask. Despite up to this point that all Senshi transformations have had a mask, the whole 2 of them. It's just an early sign of the trajectory the series is going to go when it comes to masks, with pretty much everyone losing theirs around the same time. Well, except for Tuxedo Kamen, but just calling him Tuxedo doesn't have a nice ring to it. And I'm aware Ame gets a visor, it's not the same and you know it. The beginning of both these acts start with dialogue from our antagonistic group, now officially named the Dark Kingdom. I opted to talk about both these scenes at once for a more cohesive look at the group. It's within these 2 scenes that we are introduced to the Dark Kingdom proper. Their motivations, which is seeking out the illusory silver crystal and gathering energy for their great ruler. What's great about these introductory pages is that Naoko is taking the time and establishing a hierarchy for this Dark Kingdom. Villains need a good bureaucratic structure to them, especially within a Monster of the Week type story, which early Sailor Moon tends to be. While the details are pretty vague, there's a decent sense of structure within the group for the keen reader to latch onto. At the bottom are the grunts, or the Yoma in this case. They will be making up a majority of the early encounters while our heroes are getting their feet wet. Above them are these generals, such as Jadeite. They are just as expendable, but present more of a challenge. Above them is Queen Beryl, who is clearly giving the orders, but she is also subservient to an even bigger threat, their so-called Great Ruler. It's also here that we're given some sort of inkling of an idea as to what exactly the illusory silver crystal is. But the exposition around it is rather strange, as even Queen Beryl doesn't know what the hell this thing does. When we see it in action, I'll go more into detail, but until then, let's just go with Queen Beryl's lackluster Wikipedia explanation. It's a source of great power, and whoever has it can control the universe. I mean, to be fair, for a lack of better term, the power level of the illusory silver crystal is absolutely asinine. And within the wider scope of the manga, I suppose that's a fair assessment of it as a magical item. Look, all we really need to know is that the item is incredibly strong and important. So important that the help doesn't need to know anything about it. Speaking of the help, we are introduced to 3 of the 4 Shitenteno, the 4 heavenly kings: Jadeite, Nephrite, Zoisite, and Sir not appearing in this manga chapter. Which is rather convenient for me that only 3 of the 4 Shitenteno make an appearance here. An in-depth breakdown of them is put on hold for the moment. I have a lot to say about them, so let's leave them alone for now. After all, they're about to be missing another member very soon. Unlike previous chapters where Usagi is our key focal point, we're introduced to a new character who ominously predicts something tremendous is coming. From what we can really gather about her in just this scene alone is that she's a shrine maiden. Given that this is a Japanese story, most readers would be able to figure that one out from just a glance. We're given some indication that her ominous prediction may have some truth to it, as we soon see Jadeite driving a bus. The next scene, we are once again subject to the school rumor mill, this time in relation to a Devil's 6 o'clock bus. Sadly, the intrigue about these rumors has already been dashed away from us, as we already know these rumors are true. The bus literally says 666 on it. I've seen metal albums with more subtle imagery. Yeah, Jadeite wants to get caught, but at least make the lead up more interesting, especially since it's the first and last thing you ever do. Usagi fell asleep on Luna, which caused all the air in her lungs to go straight to her face. We then almost immediately go back to Game Center Crown so Usagi and Ame can discuss their plans going forward, as well as their mission. Luna essentially doesn't let us in on any new info, apart from the main goal, which is to find and protect the princess and the illusory silver crystal. At least this puts our heroes in direct opposition of the Dark Kingdom. But this whole princess thing is swept under the rug faster than Ame can say illusory silver crystal, as Luna quickly hooks the gang up with some communicator watches, and we move on with the plot. Don't ask too many questions, Ame. So the girls get on the bus. Not the devil bus, just a regular bus. Well, it's the same route. Can Jadeite only kidnap people at 6 o'clock? Or does he do it for dramatic effect? Let's just assume he isn't driving this particular bus. But Umino tells us it's literally this bus kidnapping people. Well, it doesn't really matter because Ame told us we can see beautiful women if we get on this bus, and I trust her more than I trust Umino. And it turns out she was right, as the shrine maiden from earlier ends up along for the ride. Usagi becomes so smitten with this girl she ends up following her home. I'm not gonna really look too deeply into this, it's just flimsy justification to get Usagi involved with the plot. Usagi thinks that the girl is pretty, so she followed her home, and she ends up saying a few lines about how beautiful she is, and we're even treated with a doki doki. But apart from this scene, Naoko goes nowhere with this premise. Not Usagi being bi, that's pretty much a thing for later, but this dynamic between the two girls. Which leads me to believe that this is just a case of plot-induced infatuation because Naoko couldn't think of another reason for Usagi to follow the Shrine Maiden. I'm sure there's at least 50 other ways to get Usagi involved in the plot, such as her, I don't know, falling asleep on the bus, but that doesn't get us to the shrine, which is where the mangaka wants us. So it ultimately leads nowhere, but just remember this little interaction for later. Maybe when a little race car driver is introduced. So at the Hikawa shrine, Usagi is attacked by the guardian crows of the shrine, Phobos and Deimos. Don't forget about these two, they're a surprise tool that will help us out later. Much later. You know, for a mangaka that didn't plan her series beyond the initial first arc, Naoko Takeuchi has an incredible sense of foresight when it comes to these two. Why it didn't really extend to some of the other characters, I'll never really know. You know, Jupiter has something like 79 moons. Why doesn't Mako have, like, an army of bees or something? The Shrine Maiden senses something deeming it to be an evil spirit and proceeds to throw an Afuda while shouting Akiryo Taisin, a means of dispelling evil spirits, which as a Shrine Maiden is a rather fitting power. Naturally, since Usagi is neither evil nor a spirit, it has no effect on her, although the girl is clearly possessed by something. Next we get what can only be described as an odd scene. Naoko now has the unenviable task of introducing us to Rei Hino formally, establishing her sixth sense, giving her the rumor treatment for some reason, and hell, let's allude that she's the princess. Now let's do all of that within the span of about a single page. You know, I would have settled for just a name. Maybe have her warn Usagi about the paranormal aspects of the devil bus and have her saying she's thinking about investigating it. Instead, we get this garbled mess of exposition which does everything I just stated, but with so many extra steps, it's not even funny. It's not like there's some page limit Naoko had to stay within, which led to this bloated scene, because if she did, there's so much more fat to cut within this chapter. I'm gonna go through this stuff real quick, try to keep up. So at the beginning of this chapter, there is this little girl we see for about half a page. She got on the devil bus and went missing. This somehow ties Rei into the plot because rumors start that she's a weirdo and the Hikawa Shrine is a strange place. Then Rei explains the paranormal circumstances around the devil bus's alleged sixth slope, which, in case you didn't get it, gets completely reiterated to us yet again about a page later at Usagi's school. That's just sloppy writing. A lot of early Sailor Moon has instances similar to this. There's a lot of setup for next to no payoff. I guess it gives Rei a dramatic scene later and it casts her off as an outsider like the rest of the girls tend to be regarded. But that just serves to keep them as a tight-knit group of friends and isn't really used for any narrative function. Usagi's the only one with an established friend group that she seemingly abandons as soon as she gets cooler ones, so we can't really apply this theme of these girls not belonging. Essentially, the purpose of the girl getting kidnapped in the rumors is supposed to coalesce into a scene where the rumor-spreading lady accuses Rei of kidnapping children. It's just not interesting. The audience already knows what's truly going on, so all the potential drama from the accusation is just gone. I really don't care for this aspect of Rei's introduction. While Ame served to introduce us to the character, we gather almost no insight into Rei from these scenes. Which is a real shame because I really like Rei. She just doesn't have any real standout character moments in this particular instance. She doesn't have the Luna being an angel moment. She just has this goofy exorcism scene. And that doesn't tell us anything about Rei, just that she was wrong. Okay, so I skipped over a scene, so let's circle back to that as it's important. Usagi is riding the bus, chatting with Luna about not wanting to ride the Sendai bus route, due to it being brought up so often as a bad thing to do. Luna notices the two of them aren't alone, and we see the mysterious boy was sitting next to them the entire time. Now, Usagi not noticing him, I can easily understand. But Luna? The real importance of this scene is that I can finally refer to this character by his name, Mamoru Chiba. Usagi and Mamoru somewhat figure out each other's identities within this short bus ride, but it really begs the question, was there a single reader at the time who hadn't figured out that Mamoru was Tuxedo Kamen? This is an honest question, but was someone actually shocked at this startling revelation? While it's still not confirmed for the reader, let's not insult anyone's intelligence here. I mean, Usagi figured it out and she has the IQ of a moon rock sometimes, but we are generally so far removed from the initial run of this series that I can't locate any information about if readers had theories about Tuxedo Kamen, his identity, his motives. It's just one of those things where I can't see anyone thinking, oh, Motoki was a real Tuxedo Kamen and this is just a bait and switch or some trappings of modern writing. It's an adorable scene both in and out of narrative for this very reason. So let's cut back to the action, shall we? Rei gets onto the devil bus and is spotted by Usagi. While one would assume she would make use of her brooch and transform into Sailor Moon, Naoko wants to get some mileage out of the Henso pen, which turns Usagi into a stewardess. Even Luna doesn't quite understand the paper-thin justification, but I certainly do. Just look at Usagi. It's certainly the cutest of the disguises, with the possible exception of the Mugen Academy disguise. Usagi manages to grab a hold of the bus as it phases into a different dimension. But Luna doesn't manage to catch the bus, being caught instead by Tuxedo Kamen. It seems Usagi is going to be alone for this encounter, Well, I hate to disappoint you, dear viewer, but I just lied. Luna is still able to communicate with Usagi, and for some even stranger reason, Ame is able to teleport to Usagi. This is a really handy ability. I hope they make good use of it going forward. If you can't tell by the tone of my voice, we will never see this particular instance of teleportation again. Jadeite's plan was to kidnap people and use them to lure out Sailor Moon, which is probably why he was being so methodic with his kidnappings. He grabs a hold of Rei, which if I were him, I'd probably would have grabbed one of the innocent little girls as hostage. But I also have something called self-preservation, which Jadeite lacks. Sailor Mercury then makes a mist, and if you're reading along at home, she just makes the mist with no attack naming to be had. That was added in the re-release. Jadeite, however, is able to freeze this mist, which causes Usagi to lose hope at this situation, prompting her to cry. However, for some reason, the supersonic waves would destroy the dimension they're in due to it being unstable. Sure, whatever, that's fine by me. I'm not a fan of the supersonic waves anyhow, so let's just keep them out of the equation. Usagi then uses the Moon Frisbee as a distraction, which then traps Jadeite. Since when could it do that? If it had simply distracted Jadeite long enough for Rei to escape, it would have served the same purpose. But instead we have a new trick to add to the 20 shocking Sailor Moon facts only true fans know video, which I'm definitely not working on. Ame throws a pen to Rei as the symbol of Mars appears on her forehead. Somehow Phobos and Deimos appear. I guess they can teleport too, as Rei lets out another Akiryo Taisin, this time with more fire, which completely and brutally incinerates Jadeite. That's no guardian, that's a damn soldier. Everyone gathers together and Luna teleports the group out, and we get to formally welcome the newest addition to the cast, Sailor Mars. Next time we will be covering Act 4 as well as Act 5. While these two acts happen to have a slower pace to them, there's still plenty to cover. I hope to see you all there.